so back. I've been away, but we're up to part E of the architectural walking tour of Collingwood and Fitzroy. This building is an apartment building designed by DKO architects, and we're going to talk about what makes corner blocks so important. And then I'm going to try and convince you that this building is referencing a medieval building typology, which even I think is a stretch, but I'm obsessed with the idea, so I'm going to lean in. Part 1, why are corner blocks so important? They're a really rare gem. Not only do you get light from two sides in a building, which can never be built out, but they also operate as a landmark in a suburb. Think, for instance, of like the classic corner store, or if you live in this area, what is something that Builder's Arms, The Peel, Marquee of Lorne, Grace Darling all have in common, aside from being great pubs, but they all sit on corners. The reason that this is important is because on a corner, you can see a landmark from both sides, but you can also approach it on an angle where you can't any other building typology. So that's why they become really important pieces of our suburbs. Now, the first move this building makes responding to the corner is separating the glazing line from the facade line. By pushing the glazing back to this line, instead of building out to the boundary line, which you can see because of the change in the floor finish, they've effectively given back a metre to the pedestrian experience. This allows for a couple of things. The first thing is that they can now sit outside within their boundary. And this makes for a really active street front, which is something you really want on a corner block. The other thing about this is that it means as a pedestrian, you can literally cut the corner, which you wouldn't think would make such a difference to your street experience. But if you've ever walked down Wellington Street, which is where this is, and you've gone from built to boundary buildings and all of a sudden you get all of this extra space, there is a real sense of being invited into this building that another building built to boundary just can't do. Also, in the context of Melbourne, it offers you a little bit of protection from weather. And I can't tell you how many times I have waited in this 1 metre of space that's been given back to the pedestrian experience to get out of the rain. Now, if you're the developer, you would have to trust the architects that by removing floor area from your tenant, i.e. like you've shrunk the tenancy on the bottom floor plan because you've pulled the glazing line back in, it's not going to affect your rental yield, because generally speaking, rental yield is based on how much floor area a tenant can access. So it's a big trust move to be able to say, giving this back to the street is going to have a better impact than you earning money off nettable area that is inside. So while you're standing there, look up and you notice a clock. Now, clock towers might be my favourite medieval building type. They were regularly used as an icon and an identity marker for a city well before phones and watches were available to everyone. They have an incredible role in civic life and how people could orient themselves and get to work and come home and meet people on time before everyone had the technology that we have today. In my head, at least, they are associated with a bringing together of people because you can congregate and work out what your social calendar is around them. Stated here, the clock towers had a great impact on the urban morphology of these medieval cities. When I see a building that is on a corner and it's stacked its height on that corner, it's pulling its facade up off the corner, it drops a clock down, it's very hard for me not to relate that as a reference to the role of what a clock tower used to be in a city and understanding the importance of a corner block in a suburban fabric in this day and age. And I think it's a great alignment. So that is why I think this is referencing medieval morphology. So now let's talk about what this clock is hanging off. At first glance, this looks like brick, which is a contextual response to how many brick buildings are in Collingwood. Upon closer inspection, you realise these are very, very thin tiles, almost backed by like I think a steel cutout. Let me show you from another angle. Can you see in this one a bit better how there's like a steel backing that all the tiles are aligned to? I think this is so successful because of the use of this lintel, which gives it depth. Having that lintel basically means the building feels solid, like it's got the full depth of a brick. You don't read it as being flimsy, and that helps really ground the building being a corner block. The pattern work also does something really important for the tenancy inside. This hit and miss pattern means you get this sense of dappled light, almost like sitting under a tree when you're in the tenancy. I told you this video was going to be shorter. To recap, we have covered off why a corner block is so important, the generosity of giving a little bit of space back to the pedestrian experience instead of just building out to boundary all the time, and why I think this building is referencing a medieval clock tower. See you next time.